Welcome, welcome. I am waiting for my guest today, Annalisa Parent. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty, which happens occasionally when we do these live shows. It's one of the great things about going live. And let's see, we're going to bring her back into the studio. All right, Annalisa.
Good morning.
Oh, good morning. All right. Hey, this is awesome. So it's good to have you here. So let me tell everybody a little bit about Annalisa Parent. Annalisa Parent helps entrepreneurs to finish, publish, and sell their expert books. She is the CEO of Laurel Elite Books, a two-time Teacher of the Year nominee, and a recipient of the French Congressional Medal of Honor. Annalisa Parent, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me here, Bert. It's a pleasure to be with you.
You bet, you bet. All right, so let's talk about this. What does a book do for an entrepreneur or a CEO or a thought leader? Give me your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked, because what a book does is really highlight an entrepreneur's expertise first and foremost. And there are really two audiences for that book. One is the potential client, but two is the media exposure that expertise then gets for the entrepreneur, the small business owner, the CEO. And that really gets the ball rolling, showing them as the expert, really highlighting and showcasing what it is, not only that they're an expert in, but how it is that they're able to help people to solve problems.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay, so let me ask you this. I've heard that a book is, sometimes a, what do you call it? Kind of a high-end or expensive business card. And then I've also heard other people say that a book is a great conversation starter. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, good question, because there is a difference between the business card book and the conversation starting book. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because those are things that people really mix up to their own peril. So a business card book is a short book. It's usually small, kind of a 5x5 intro, like a business card would be. That's not what I specialize in. What I specialize in are those conversation starting books, so that that potential client, that potential customer, that potential person that you can help can open that book to any page and know, oh my goodness, there's an expert out there who not only knows how to solve my problem, but has proven results in solving that problem time and time again. And that's a powerful conversation to be having with this potential client. And it's almost a time machine, isn't it? Because you don't have to be there in person to be having that conversation. You're having this, at 2 a.m. with someone across the world, or someone in a library, or someone in a bookstore. It's really kind of this magical phenomenon of a conversation starter.
Yeah, I like what you said there about it doesn't require them being present, right? I mean, one of the things that all of us want to do is to be able to leverage our time. So if you put a book out there, or a show like this, or an article, it's literally working for you 24/7. And the great thing about a book is that somebody can really get to know the author and see if they resonate, and see if that, man, this person is, thinks just like I do, or their story is similar to what I experienced, and therefore this person can probably help me with my business, right?
Exactly. And you bring up a really good point there, Bert, about that likability, that relatability, because some people are going to pick up my book and say, wow, this is really the person for me. And some people are going to pick it up and say, no, this isn't the person for me. And either way, that's a really good result, because I want to help the people I can help. And I want the people for whom I'm not exactly the right fit to find the person who can really help them, and they really relate to that person person's story. So it's a really powerful filter, if you will, in how we work with our clients, because those are our differentiating factors, aren't they? We may all have similar solutions to a problem, but how we attack it is what differentiates us from people who are in the same space that we are.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I'm sure that you get this all the time. I get this question all the time: is there's already somebody out there, and this person has already got X amount of market share, or something along that line. How am I going to compete? How am I going to stand out when there's this person or this brand? And so how do you answer to somebody like that who maybe is thinking about writing a book, but really is intimidated because the market maybe is already, they think that the market already has a book or two or five or 10. So talk about that.
Sure. And, this is a really good question. And I'm going to go back to that idea that we are all different in the way that we are approaching. I'm not the only entrepreneur book publisher out there, but the way that I do things is a little different than the way that other people do things. We are Laurel elite. That's our differentiating factor, is that we're really thorough. We really work through the whole process with our author. So that's a little different from other people who do the same thing. So helping those entrepreneurs to see those differentiating factors, to see where the space is for them, not just in what they do, but in who they are.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. All right, so I want to talk about this because this is the thing that I think probably stops most people or intimidates a lot of people. So I want to get your feedback on this, because this is one of the things that I think you do that really separates a lot of people in this industry, and that is you help individuals come up with the content. Specifically, if they already have, let's say, some blog content, or maybe they have some other articles out there, you help them actually compile that and put that into a book form. Am I right?
Right. So what we're looking at when we help people to put together books is going above and beyond that business card book or the compilation of blog articles, or another popular one is quotes by famous people from the past. We don't want any of those. We want a conversation starter. And, 50%, greater than 50% of the books that are purchased are not read. And so what we want is, if that reader looks at the back of a book or the front of a book or opens to page 137, that they are able to start that conversation from that page. So it's not just about the material. It's not just about the conversation starter. It's also about the graphic design and how is that drawing the reader in? How is that appealing? How are we representing information in snippets that are easily digestible, but that also allow the depth of conversation if people continue to turn the pages? And we've found that those are the kind of books that really get traction and results. Those are the kind of books that sell well, and those are the kind of books that convert into clients.
Gotcha. All right. So I want to ask you this, because I think this is, one of the, again, stumbling blocks that people have when it comes to writing a book. They don't see how that book is going to become a tool for growth. How is a book going to help me scale my business? And you answer, how do you answer that?
That's an excellent question. And I think that most people who end up locked in that dichotomy are looking at a book as a book. And for entrepreneur experts, it is technically a book. Physically, by definition, it is a book. But what it really is a scaling tool. And so everything that we do from the very beginning of the writing treats that product like the scaling tool that it is. And so that conversation that you and I are talking about is a really important part of that. But then how you're positioning and marketing that piece is vastly different than if you wanted to be a New York Times bestseller in contemporary fiction, for example. Those are two very different arenas for the same physical product, two very different purposes. And so really taking a look at that marketing strategy from day one is the most important thing. And as a follow-up to that, Bert, I would say that 50% of the people who come to me are entrepreneurs who say, I really know that I've got some expertise, but I have no idea how to write a book because I'm not a writer. And 50% of the people who come to me are people who say, well, I wrote this book, I slopped it up on Amazon and nobody's buying it. How come? And
Right.
so that marketing strategy, knowing how to leverage it as a scaling tool, is the most overlooked part and the most important part, because that's why entrepreneurs are doing this. They're not doing it for the edification of seeing their name on a book. They're doing it to bring their business to another level.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, what's interesting is you look at people out there that are well-known brands, and they all have that one thing in common, is that they've written at least one book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have written multiple books, but at least one book. I mean, you know, whether it's Tony Robbins or Richard Branson, you know, they've all written at least one book. And they use that book as, in some cases, they use that book as a platform to launch their business or to maybe build their business on. I mean, what I look at Tony Robbins and let's see, people like him, where if you pick up his book, Personal Power, and then you listen to his audio or you go to a live event, the material is basically the same. It's just different versions of that, right? You go to a live event versus a book versus an audio, but he literally built an entire business around the content of that book.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's really powerful. You point out that expertise. And one of the things that you tapped into with that is that know, like, and trust factor, right? And that's what a book can do for you. So you might pick up a Tony Robbins book and say, wow, this is really powerful for me. I'm going to go to one of his events, or I'm going to buy another book, right? So a book can really act as a top of funnel activity. It can also fall anywhere within the funnel to up that know, like, and trust factor.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said there. It can be the top of the funnel. It can be anywhere in between that funnel. It can be used so many different ways. I want to talk about this because going back to something that you said, where somebody publishes a book, they, as you said, slap it on Amazon, and of course, nothing happens. I know that you had at least one of your clients, multiple of your clients maybe, that have sold literally hundreds of thousands of your books. I think you had one success story that did over 500,000 copies of their books. And that's a big rarity, because I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the average author sells about 200 or 300 copies. And here you are doing hundreds of thousands of copies. So how do you do that? What is your secret to help your clients hit thousands and thousands of sales?
That's a great question, right? Because 50% of those people are coming and saying, I've got a garage full of books. What did I do wrong? And so it's really about having that marketing strategy from the get-go and knowing exactly what your tactics are, because that's going to change for every niche, for every industry, and for every individual audience, what it is that you're going to do with your book. So having a really firm idea of where your audience is. So I said slap it up on Amazon. A lot of people also slap it up on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, you name it. They don't really have a strategy for how they're going to reach the people who need that book. And then secondly, having a really good book is important, right? People talk to each other by the water cooler, and they're going to say, don't bother with that book. You absolutely have to check out that book. You want the book that people are going to pass on to each other, that people are going to give as a gift, that when you do a speaking engagement, every person in the room is going to want to buy that book at the back of the room because they've fallen in love with you, your message, and what you can do for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the one of the misconceptions out there is that, hey, if I open my business, people will come. If I write a book, people will come. If I make a movie, people will come. And a lot of people don't realize that the reason that business is so successful, the reason that book is a New York Times best-selling book, or that movie hit millions, millions of sales on the first opening week, is because of the marketing prior to that, and even during. Tim Ferriss, I think he's a multiple-time New York Times bestseller, and a lot of people don't realize that this guy is a marketing machine. I mean, first of all, he has a list. So when he puts out a new book, the first thing he markets it to is his list. Second of all, he buys Facebook ads, he buys Twitter ads, he buys LinkedIn ads to get the people to understand that he's got a book out there. And a book, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is really very analogous to having a business. It is not going to be successful unless, first of all, one of the things that you said, it's got to be good. And second of all, you got to market it. You got to sell it.
Absolutely. And it's part of a strategy, an arm of the business. And, as you were talking about that, Bert, I was thinking, if you've ever watched television on any channel during the commercial break, for a half-hour show, you're going to see that same dang ad for cheese 8 times, right? They bought lots of slots on purpose for that multiple exposure. And, when I was a kid, my brother and I used to make fun of it because you'd see those same ads over and over and over again. But there's a reason for that repetition. There's a reason that you're putting something in front of eyes over and over and over again. And there's a sequence for when you refresh that. So you don't want to play exactly the same ad in exactly the same time slot every time. You make things fresh and new so that the viewer feels like something is new, but they're still getting the message that your product is the unique solution to their problem.
Yeah, I am so glad that you brought this up. This is one of those things that, again, people really do not understand, the power of repetition. The reason that cheese ad will play multiple times during, that 30-minute show is because we as humans sometimes don't hear or see a message until we've heard it 3, 4, 5, 10 times. And in order for us to hear it, 5 or 10 times, that message may have to play, 30 or 40 times. And so, you have some people that do not understand marketing, and what they will do is they will, let's say they'll run an ad and they immediately give up on it because they're not overwhelmed with sales. Hey, I marketed my book for like a week and I didn't get any sales. And so marketing doesn't work, or advertising doesn't work, or this platform doesn't work because I tried it. The reality is they barely tried it, and they might have, most likely, tried it incorrectly. They just didn't know what they were doing.
You're so right. And that causes a lot of platform hopping. They'll jump from Facebook to Twitter to LinkedIn. And that's not always the answer. Now, absolutely following your data and knowing where your numbers are coming from is essential. But you're right. I think that a lot of people give up the ghost a little bit too soon in that marketing strategy. And I think that that's why knowing where that trifecta of where your audience hangs out, how often they're there, what time they're on, all of those are important pieces, data points for the potential advertiser to know and to be in it for the long haul. You might not get traction in the first week or the first month, but you need to know where your data is so that you can make wise decisions about where you should be spending your advertising dollars.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories or success stories, if you will, is there's this very well-known brand out there called Star Wars. And when Disney was coming out with their latest Star Wars, movie, they were promoting it a year in advance. And here's a movie that has a massive built-in audience, and they're promoting it a year in advance. They're spending millions of dollars to promote a movie to literally an audience of that's already built in, an audience that's probably close to 1 billion people, definitely in the millions, and they are promoting it a year in advance. And I know that a lot of us don't have the budget that Disney has, but I think that the marketing plan, or at least the success story, can be copied. And meaning, if you're going to launch a book, and again, I want your opinion on this. If you're going to launch a book, you probably want to start promoting it, weeks, months before that book is ready to hit the Amazon or the street or whatever you want to call it, and then you're promoting it throughout the launch, and then you're promoting it afterwards, and maybe you're enticing people, hey, buy my book, get this for free. Is that what you're talking about, doing something like that when you're saying have a marketing plan?
Absolutely. You've got to have a marketing cycle, and certainly your pre-sales are a really important part of that, creating that buzz, getting people excited, incentivizing early purchases. All of those are a really important part of your marketing cycle. And I was speaking recently with the head of a major publishing company, and she said, every time that a new reader sees a book, it's a new book for them. And I think that sometimes authors forget that, where I can say, oh, my book's been out for a year, everybody's tired of seeing it. Well, no, the people who haven't seen it yet and the people who need that message, who are yearning for the solution that I have, I need to keep doing that work. If that's my passion and my mission, which it should be, if you're writing an expert book on something, you should love this thing. You should want to get that message out. Yes, there will be rejections. Yes, there will be failures, but welcome to business. That's part of the way that this thing works, this thing that we do. So you just pick yourself up, look at the data, and target your efforts elsewhere.
Yeah, I like that. I hope that everybody picked up on that. To me, that's a nice little nugget that this person might be seeing your book for the first time, might be hearing about you for the first time. And again, there is the the motivation to always be marketing. You look at the 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. That book's been around, what, 20 years, maybe 30 years, and it still brings in new readers. People are discovering that book every day and going, wow, this is the greatest book ever. And it starts a whole new fan club, or maybe not a club, but a new fan is now following Ken Blanchard and maybe buying his other books because they just discovered this book for the first time, even though it's been around for, 20, 30 years.
Absolutely. And I think Star Wars, which you brought up, is a really good example of that. Star Wars is a pretty established brand. Disney, also very established brand. If they are working a year in advance, if they are finding new viewers, people who are going to love their franchise and go back and watch all of those old movies and buy the old merchandise, well, guess what? We've got to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, there's so much, strategy in today's conversation. I mean, again, you have to have a marketing plan. And before you have a marketing plan, you really have to have a book that you can say that's a good book. And of course, that is subjective, but bottom line is, when you put out some of your best work, you have to say, man, I've really invested in this book. I've done the research. I've planned it. You've had, let's say a professional editor. You've invested the time to have a professional cover, and you've really put your best foot forward so you can get the best results possible. Okay, so let me ask you this. When it comes to a cover and a title, a back cover, how important are these elements to a successful book?
Vital. So we have this expression, you can't judge a book by its cover. Well, guess what? That's bunk. We all judge a book by its cover, and that's what we choose. And, the big 5 publishing companies out there, they know this. They've got entire departments, and they know which colors for which genre. It's a real industry. And so I would say, that 50% of people who come to me and say, why didn't my book sell? Well, the first conversation we're typically having is your cover. Did you design your cover by yourself because you wanted to save money? Well, all right, let's back it up, because in each industry, it's really important that you follow the conventions of the industry. Now, you might fall in love with your cover and think that it's really great, but it's completely wrong for the target audience that you're going for. There's also a lot of psychology around cover design and color. Those are really important elements to be drawing in. So it's not about, do I love my cover? If you make a cover design, great, frame it, put it on your wall and keep it forever and ever. But it's not necessarily the cover that you need to have on your book so that it will appeal to your ideal reader and sell.
Yeah, if anybody would like, they can actually Google that exact thing, and they will find literally hundreds of books that really sold very poorly because they had the wrong cover or they had the wrong title. And all of a sudden they changed the title, redesigned the book cover, and that took off. What is it? What's the Chicken Soup for the Soul, to me, is a great example. Most people don't necessarily know what Chicken Soup for the Soul book might be about, but the title is very intriguing. It's like, wow, Chicken Soup for the Soul. That title really conjures up, a lot of nurturing, for most people, a lot of good feelings, and they're going to go, well, let me find out what this book's about. So I really attribute a lot of their success to having a really just an ideal, a perfect title, and you can, there's been other books similar to that where they compile different stories that inspired and were really heartwarming, but the title of Chicken Soup for the Soul, I think, just nailed it, and most people just said, man, they resonated with it immediately. It kind of gave you an idea that what this book was about is going to make you feel good, just like Mom's chicken soup.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich is another great example, right? The original title was something like 27 Ways to Be a Good Manager. It wasn't exactly that, but it was that bad, right? Whereas Grow Rich is brilliant. Everybody wants to think and grow rich. So everyone bought that book. And, nearly 100 years later, it's one of the best sellers. So you're right. A title is vital.
Yeah, title is vital. There you go. I love that. Title is vital. And I believe you're right. It was I think it was like 27 steps to getting rich or 10 steps to getting rich. And it was like, what? And what's really funny is you still see that today. It's like the 15 steps that leaders make. It's like 15 steps. I mean, who's got time for that? And there's one out there, it's like 101 shortcuts to make your business better. 100 what? And it's like, it's overwhelming. I mean, as a business person, I don't think I have time to look at 101 steps or 101 ideas. So yeah, title is vital. I love that. All right. So I want to throw your link up here one more time so people can find you if they want to reach out to you. It's laurelelite.com, laurelelite.com. They can go there. You got a bunch of resources there. They can contact you if they have questions regarding their book. So if you're an author and you have, as you said, a garage full of book copies that aren't moving, maybe Annalisa can help you, guide you. And Annalisa, I want to say thank you so much for stopping by, and I want to thank everybody for chiming in today and being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Bert. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you today.
You bet. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon, Annalisa.
Sounds good.